In the former region of Eurasinia, right at the intended location for Demon Lord Milim's new capital, a fierce life and death struggle was unfolding. Esprit was locked in combat against the Antlian Peliad, fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. The battle seemed so dire that she was on the verge of voicing her frustration. Esprit was pitted against Peliad, an adversary who could nullify magical abilities, making her the absolute worst opponent for Esprit. Notably, even her point-blank attempt to deploy the powerful nuclear cannon magical spell was effortlessly repelled as if it were an expected outcome. Peliad's defense mechanism, in the form of a prism barrier, had the astounding ability to deflect all forms of magic. Remarkably, this prism barrier extended beyond magic and also countered certain emission-based techniques to a certain extent. Allow me to lend a hand. You're aware that this individual spells significant trouble, don't you? Well, of course. However, I'm more compatible for this confrontation than you, wouldn't you agree? Well, I guess you're correct. In that situation, I'll engage using this as well. In a numerical mismatch of 2 against 1, they found themselves significantly outmatched in terms of combat prowess. Esprit stepped into the fray, her sword slicing through the air with purpose. Indeed, just when Esprit felt confident in landing a hit, Peliad vanished in a cascade of light particles. Initially, Esprit briefly entertained the idea that it might be an afterimage, yet she rapidly grasped the reality. Peliad materialized into multiple forms in the ensuing moment. Esprit's extraordinary ultra-intuition was rendered ineffective in differentiating them, and all the replicas were indistinguishable from the genuine article. Peliad's strength was indeed remarkable. Predictably, Esprit and Phobio were besieged from all angles, struggling to repel the deluge of attacks while failing to identify the primary entity. The thought of restarting the conflict and abandoning the fight crossed Esprit's mind. However, succumbing to death was not a feasible choice, while there lingered the possibility of revival. Yielding in such a manner would amount to disobeying the orders of Rimuru-sama. Carrera-sama's displeasure and her own self-condemnation were unpalatable prospects. This inner turmoil began to impede Esprit's movements. Capitalizing on this opening, Peliad's venomous fangs set their sights on the target. Don't just stand there. With a well-timed kick, Phobio propelled Esprit to safety. Without delay, the area where Esprit had occupied a mere moment earlier became cloaked in Peliad's venomous scales, unleashed by her. This poison possessed an entrancing, brilliantly radiant appearance, yet it held the capacity to lethally harm demons, regardless of its captivating allure. Oh, that hurts? Thank you. Phobio acknowledged Esprit's sincere gratitude with a casual response before resuming his assault on Peliad. He executed a series of claw attacks, seemingly futile, yet managing to disperse the numerous duplicates. Despite the apparent futility due to the inability to distinguish between the real and fake copies, Phobio remained undeterred in his straightforward approach. Hey, you're not as strong as I am, so why haven't you given up? You're quite straightforward. Well, that's okay. Survival equals victory, as Geld-san said. It doesn't matter if you win next time instead. I'm not that strong. As much as I dislike admitting it, I'll just do what I can. I'm competitive myself, but I have to admit, you're pretty impressive too. I'll give you that, Black Leopard Fang Phobio. Thank you, Esprit Dono. No need to be so formal with me, you know. I've learned my lesson from being too formal before. Also, I think we should save the leisurely conversation for later. Time's not on our side. Even if victory seemed unlikely, Phobio didn't waver in his determination, launching increasingly fierce attacks against Peliad. With a gust of jet black wind, he slashed at multiple duplicates with his claws, although his efforts remained ineffective. However, perhaps due to growing irritation, Peliad finally retaliated for the first time. Esprit closely observed this unfolding situation. It was Gabua-san, one of Benimaru-sama's subordinates, wasn't it? I used to think Phobio was a strange individual who incessantly talked about his romantic exploits with his girlfriend. But he does come through when the situation demands it. Unlike demons who can be revived even after death, he's a fragile being who wouldn't return once he's gone. From Esprit's perspective, even Phobio, who had risen to become one of the most formidable figures among the greater Magin, was ultimately still a delicate entity. Realistically, defeating her seems impossible, right? That's why, Phobio-san, let's make things difficult for her as much as we can. Do you have a plan? A direct confrontation won't lead to victory. So, even if it's a bit underhanded, could you consider striking a deal with the devil? At this moment, Phobio was being visited by scales, and his form was adorned with an increasing multitude of extremely delicate marks. It was merely a question of time until the toxin would impact his body, signifying the conclusion of his existence. Another deal. But I don't have the luxury to dwell on that right now, do I? Alright then, what exactly does this deal with the devil entail? Phobio's past experience of being deceived by footmen and others in a prior deal left a lingering bitter memory. Nevertheless, he had resolved to move forward and was ready to accept her proposal. It's quite a common arrangement. You simply state your desire, and in return, I'll ask for your soul. I get it. I trust in Esprit Dono, so I'm willing to go along with this deal. That's reassuring. If you had even a hint of doubt, I wouldn't have been able to intervene in time. And so, naturally, my wishes. The strength to overcome this. Esprit affirmed her understanding and triggered the demonic contract to fulfill Phobio's request. In that very moment, a passage to Phobio's soul opened as the offering, granting Esprit entry. She hesitated briefly before severing her own uncertainty, leaving behind her physical form and adopting her natural state as a spiritual entity. This was an ability intrinsic to the demon race known as possession. It was occasionally employed to inhabit the body of a contracted individual, and the intent this time aligned with a similar purpose. I truly didn't want to resort to this method. It's disheartening to think I had to leave the remarkable body Rimuru-sama bestowed upon me right here on the battlefield like this. What in the world is happening? Calm down. Despite the crisis we're in, we're elongating the time frame considerably with thought hyper-acceleration. I understand now. This is the perspective of those at the highest echelons. In my case, I still have a considerable journey ahead. Carrera-sama is reputedly about 100 million times more adept, capable of executing rituals that typically span years in mere moments. Haha, that's truly impressive. Time is abundant, or rather, there's time to spare, so please listen to me. I have detached from my physical form and reverted to my original spiritual existence in order to reside within you. Normally, I would possess the host and leverage their power as mine, but that procedure has limitations, and truthfully, it wouldn't significantly enhance my strength. I have merged with you to pool our capabilities. What's your plan? You must concentrate on evading. As things stood, you likely would have been defeated within 5 minutes. However, by combining our strengths, if I harness that power, do you believe I can overcome her? She's not an adversary you can conquer with just that ability. She seems to possess a greater insight than I do. Peliad also possessed compound eyes that could decipher various types of information. Her ability to perceive the flow of magicules enabled her to deflect any form of magic. Naturally, her thought acceleration surpassed Esprit's as well. So, what's our strategy then? You'll do everything in your capacity to stay alive. And you're not alone in this endeavor. I'm here to assist you too. I understand. So the goal is to enhance our chances of survival to the utmost. Exactly. Our strategic triumph lies in enduring until someone arrives capable of defeating her. And if we can divert her attention and keep her away from Carrera-sama, then we really have nothing to lament. In essence, this approach aims to buy us time. Correct. It's the sole recourse. The disparity in our abilities is stark, so it's unavoidable. But don't fret. According to my calculations, we should be able to endure for around 20 minutes. Haha, that's quite encouraging. Phobio couldn't help but chuckle, feeling far from reassured. However, he persisted. Despite the discomfort of acknowledging it, Phobio recognized his own weakness. He had resolved that the powerless also possessed their unique approach to combat, and he was determined to employ every effort to realize that approach. Thus, the conflict moved into its second phase.